write in the chat if you're excited. If you're excited to be here, write where you're from. Let's get to know each other and let's talk about designing product in a Web3 world. So a quick note on me. I run a company called Late Checkout. We're kind of like the McKinsey of community-based products and Web3. We're kind of like sneakily behind working with some of the biggest projects in the Web3 world and also in the Web2 world. We also do investing and we also incubate our own stuff. Before I talk about actually product design in Web3, I wanted to take a few minutes just to talk about how people might generate ideas for your NFT project. So this whole session is really just designed to like get your creative juices flowing, and then we'll get into a Q&A and just sort of hash it out together. So here's two frameworks that I use to generate ideas for NFT projects. One is studying traditional community design, and the second is studying exceptional NFT projects, and I'll explain what each means. So when I think about the most sort of OG community organization, I think of religion. I think of the Holy Book, holidays, places of worship, all these things, and I try to apply that to a Web3 product. So as an example, you can think of a holy book like a Bible, like a roadmap. You can think of a holiday like Christmas to a drop. You can think of a place of worship like this telegram. You think of rituals like us saying good morning to each other. You can think of a sense of a community as sort of the same. It's identity and community. You can think of short-term incentives. Usually that's price fluctuations and status. And you can think of long-term incentives, which in religion is like going to heaven, which is wealth and status. So I try to think about some of these different sort of old school ways of thinking about community and applying it to Web3 products. And the other thing I do is I look for new and interesting communities. Some of you might have heard me talk about the unbundling of Reddit, where you can look at different subreddits and see different communities that pop up. Another way I like to do it is look at demographics versus psychographics. So I can look at a particular demographic, which is like, I like to think of demographics as sort of, black or white. Like this person earns $100,000 a year. He or she or they lives in London, they've got a family, you can't really argue with it, versus psychographics, which is more interest-based. So for example, he likes Manchester United, or they save a lot of money, or they like cats. And this combination of demographics and psychographics helps me ideate. I saw this tweet today by Dickie Bush, who's awesome, who talked about this a little bit. He talks about the magic of specificity. I write about yoga, mass market, 10 followers, 0 customers. Or I write about 15-minute beginner yoga flows for stay-at-home moms. Niche market, 150,000 followers, 10,000 customers. Get uncomfortably specific, then go one step further. The point here, the point that he's basically making is he's looking at demographics and psychographics. He's putting it together, and that's the beauty of Web2 products, but also Web3 products. So when I think about communities, in a Web2 and Web3 context, I think about it as, when I think about community-based products, I think about how do you couple together a people, an interest, and a format. So as an example, if you look at like the Loot project, I'm sure, most people here are familiar with that one. The original community that they targeted was product designers. Dom has a huge following of product designers, so on Twitter and other places. So that was the initial sort of group. The interest was D&D, games, fantasy, and RPG, and the format here was an image, black, white, and text. So thinking about format is really important in terms of like the hook for this particular audience. The second way to do it is you basically remix existing projects. And this is, there's a few ways you can go about it. So one idea is you take a similar idea, but you pick a new community. So you're like, I'm going to go build cool cats for Canadians, and I'm going to slap utility on with that. Or we just talked about Loot, similar idea, new format. Let's go create Loot for numbers. Or you take a similar idea and you add new utility. So for example, a lot of people here are probably familiar with the Cryptodes project, like thinking about zombie toads, which is an offshoot of Cryptodes, where they just applied a social token called brains. And then the last one is a similar idea coupled with a brand and creator. So for example, what would boxing bunnies look like with Jake Paul? So you can take a similar idea and attach it to a creator. These are 4 sort of mini ways to help your brain get going and to get the creative juices flowing. And I just want to say that one of the most important things about ideating NFT ideas is the ability to, in one sentence, explain what clearly is your project, to pique curiosity. And I like using this one-liner formula: how, what, and why. What's the format? What's the utility? And I say, what's the raison d'etre? Maybe because I speak French. So as an example, World of Women, what is their one-liner? World of Women was created to bring diversity and inclusiveness. There you have their mission and purpose to the NFT space while bridging the gap between collectibles and single edition artworks. There you can kind of understand their format. Loot is a randomized adventure gear generated and stored on chain. Axie Infinity is Pokemon-inspired universe where anyone could earn tokens through skilled gameplay and contributions to the ecosystem. You'd be surprised how many Web3 projects cannot nail their one-liner. Now, let's talk about Web3 and product design. We've talked a little bit about ideas, but let's get down to it. Great follow on Twitter, Dapboy. Actually, he kind of summarized how I think a lot about designing products in Web3. Brand building in 2021 and 2022 and 2023 is much closer to a video game design than it is to graphic design. In building lore, character, story arcs, worlds, out designing logos and a 90-page brand guidelines. So here's what we thought the future of web design might look like. At least I did. Super clean, minimalistic. What would Steve Jobs do type design. This is what the future of web design looks like. So I can't see if anyone knows what this is. I'm sure some people recognize this. This is Neopets. Right in the chat, shout out Neopets if you ever played Neopets or it ever made an impact on you. But this idea of a world where you can do things is the future of Web3 product design. So as an example, late checkout, I told you a little bit about what we do. We didn't design a website. We decided we obviously had to do a world. And we haven't announced this or anything like that, but you could actually connect your wallet and buy merch, for example. Like if you go and click, this construction zone, we just launched this today where you can connect your wallet. And if you have the late checkout token, you can actually go and buy it, which is pretty cool. So these are the types of things that people are going to expect when you're doing Web3 product design. How many of you have seen this project? I'm sure of a lot. It was the #1 project on OpenSea. Goblin Town yesterday in terms of volume, and let's just go and look at it from a world perspective. So you get on their website. This is actually animated. You see the little goblin, coming up. You can see they have a particular way of speaking. So you can just enter already here, and then you enter Goblin Town, and it's just like you really get this sense from. And everything's kind of like moving, and it's just a unique aesthetic. So you kind of feel like you're in some world, although it isn't as worldly as, like, for example, the late checkout world. I think they did a pretty good job, although not an amazing job at creating the world. Any Cool Cats holders in here will recognize this website. This is the new Cool Cats website where you can go and do certain things. However, what I don't like about it is you have to have the NFT to actually go and access the world. So they kind of miss out on a huge portion of people who just really want to kind of browse. Like, for example, in the late checkout, what we talked about in the late checkout, token gated, like, I'm still able to browse without having the tokens, right? So I think there's a huge miss in terms of Cool Cats not opening it up to the public. But overall, good aesthetic. You kind of see the world, and it's quite good vibes. This is Turf. I think the website is turf.dev, if I remember correctly. And it's a metaverse sort of game type product. And it does really feel like you're in a world here. This is their website. You can kind of zoom in and you can actually click on one of the NFTs and you can learn more about it. And again, talk about worlds. Like I kind of understand, I kind of get the sense of it and I kind of get the vibe. So overall, pretty good job by them. Here's a miss opportunity. So Chris, I know, he was really into cryptodes as I was really into cryptodes and still am into cryptodes. And this is their website. And I think they did, Gremplin is an incredible designer and it's an incredible project, but this is an old way of thinking about, web design in Web3. It's very like 2D. They're kind of getting the sense, like you kind of get the sense of like, here's the world, but you don't really get that 3D kind of like full immersion. When you're thinking about Web3 product design, think about how can I immerse the person involved? That's your goal. It's 100% about immersion. If you can do that, then you've created success in Web3 product design. Another 2D kind of flat version, but was onto something. I remember when this launched in March last year, I guess. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I feel like I have to enter the club and I press enter, the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like in the speakeasy. This is so cool. This, like, if this launched today, this wouldn't be enough to get people excited. So I think it's taking this concept that they crushed and just taking it to the next level, a la Cool Cats, etc. So here's some product levers that you can think of, and we can talk about this in the Q&A. But here's a few things that you should be thinking about. Maybe like screenshot this, or I know some people are watching this recorded. Like, feel free to write this down. But here's what you should be thinking about if you're designing a Web3 product. These are a few of them. World building. So what is the world that you're trying to create? Things to do. How do you include games and stuff like that onto the experience so that it isn't like I hit the publish button and I launch this website and it's a ghost town? You have to constantly be thinking about how do I get people and create experiences and mini games. I always think about it as mini games, even if it's not a game, like a mini type game, mini experience that you can go and do something. Sound. So many missed opportunities to include sound, both from like I click this and something happens, and also music, to really again immerse people into the product. I always say storytell, don't copyright. So in Web3, you want to storytell and not just like write copy. So think about how do I create a hook? How do I create challenges, a climax, a resolution? Like you're creating a movie script. So you have to be thinking about storytelling as people are, going through the experience. Leaderboards, so that people are highly competitive, human nature. So thinking about where to include leaderboards is really important. What are ways to earn social tokens and NFTs? This could be connected to the mini experiences. What are ways to share things on social? So having experiences that make people share on social. What are quests that people could partake? Is there virtual land that people could buy? So for example, like on the late checkout website, should we sell land? Should we give land to our clients? How do we think of token gating content in commerce? How do you think about video and animation, not static? Goblin Town did such a good job at video and animation. Cryptodes, as an example, and Cool Cats actually was very static. How do I think about tokenomics? How do I think about the cost of the NFT? These are levers that you have, right? Goblin Town was a free to mint, so it got a lot of people onto the website. The cost is a really big lever to get people to do stuff on your product. How do I think about a closed versus open world? We saw Cool Cats being mostly closed, but how do you think about it being open? How do you think about rights? I'm sure a lot of people here know about CC0, but thinking about different rights and how that could spread the meme. And then, of course, utility. The bottom line is you become, as a Web3 product designer, you become this mix between a film director, a game designer, and a web designer. And it's this like new role. It's this really new role where you have to understand a little bit of all, because you have to understand storytelling, you have to understand audio visual, you have to understand like web, what can you do on the web. But these are some of the product levers that you should be thinking about. And now I just wanted to open it up to folks and sort of have a
Greg, that was mind blowing. Everyone in the chat is just like, holy moly. It's so refreshing to like hear about this world building and all the different tools that we have to create it, to tell these stories is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for like allowing me to share this. Like I wanted to share this because I don't feel like there's enough talk about Web3 product design. There's so much out there, books, podcasts, and I don't know if other people agree with me, but I just feel like we need to start the conversation around what are best practices when it comes to Web3 product design. What are the do's? What are the don'ts? So, and I can't believe there's 123 people in here?
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. Wow, the pop goes hard. I love it.
They've been excited. Yeah, it's cool. We've got 2,000 holders out there, and I think 1,400 are in the chat and 150 today and in the video, and we're recording it so we can share it with them too. And this is like really cool to say. I think the one thing, as you kept talking, I kept thinking about the opportunities for like CPG to create more of a world, and like what the universe of like consumer goods and how we can like kind of tell that story, and like, a marketplace or like a shopping center, and kind of like creating that hustle and bustle and all that kind of fun stuff we could do. So I was definitely inspired and like taking notes, and I could see everybody else in the chat was too. And if you're in the audience and you have a question, please start raising your hands as we get this going.
Yeah, no, I want to hear from you all. I think like there's so many. I think once you put a film director hat on, like I should buy one of those, and you should buy one of those. We should actually make pop ones. Then then it kind of changes how you think about web design, right? Like, so for example, on the late checkout website, we were talking about like, how do we put people moving, walking around? How do we put our clients, how do we have our clients have buildings there? What does that look like, right? So thinking about all these things through is super, super helpful. And
yeah,
Greg's
I agree. Okay, let's bring up NFT God.
Oh yeah, that sounds great.
Hey, how's it going, Greg? Great presentation, man. I took a ton of notes. I think this is really, really unique, interesting information. So really appreciate it. So my question's this. First of all, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, you sound great.
All right, cool. My question's this. I think that a big part of Web3 is not only having a great product. I think a lot of companies are learning this right now and releasing really high quality products, as you showed. But I think there's a huge art kind of to the early game as well. And if you can really master the early part of the product development cycle, you really set up yourself to be in position to succeed. So I want to kind of pick your brain on what do you focus on when you're building product earlier? How do you start building community, building attention, so that when you do release your product, you get a lot of eyes right away? So kind of interested to hear your thought process from the early product building stages and how you start building it out.
So are you familiar with the NFT project MEMS? MEMS?
I've heard of it, but I haven't dug too deep into it.
So MEMS is a really, really interesting case study because for a few reasons. The first is they didn't launch with the Discord. And they pushed all the conversation onto Twitter. So what they did is they have this incredible artist. His name is escaping me right now, but Maxi is his name. And he created basically what I think is so fascinating about MEMS is they started the project like January 1, 2022, and they launched it like 80 days later or something. And what they did is they would post daily on Twitter different images that introduced you to the world of MEMS. and also celebrated community as well, and also did announcements, but they did it all through this image format. And if someone could actually put their Twitter account, and people can actually get a sense. Actually, I can share my screen. Let me share my screen. You see my screen?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So it's basically this kind of vibe. And it's unique, of course. So let me go back to my face. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm just getting used to Telegram. This is my first time doing this. So anyways, what I think was so smart is they did that. The problem with doing it in a Telegram and in a Discord in this private setting is that you just get shared a lot. So I think the first thing that you should do, and the thing that we're sort of telling a lot of our clients is push the conversation publicly and think about what sort of aesthetic image format could help tell the story in a new and unique way. That's the biggest thing that I think about.
Right. So kind of storytelling through image, and then from a
on social, on places on. There's only two places you should be focusing on: Twitter and TikTok, because those are the two places where you can actually go viral. You're not going viral on Instagram. It's not happening. It's 2022.
And I'm sure there's no magic bullet to this next question, but from a attention gathering perspective, what is some of the best ways to get attention in your mind on Twitter or TikTok to start building the community or audience?
On Twitter it's easy, right? Because you can just see what other people are doing and just kind of copy them. So you know what works. Inherently, everyone here in this, if you're here, if you're a pop, you know what works on Twitter. Does that mean you want to do it? That's a different story, right? We all know that threads work. We all know that threads are cringy. That's why a lot of us don't do it. And it's also a lot of work. But I think, on Twitter, I think if you can do storytelling either in thread format or using images or video, like how Mems was doing it, that's your best bet to go viral. Focus only on images or focus primarily on threads. And then on TikTok, it's thinking about what are your content pillars and doing what I call trend jacking, which is looking at different trends that are coming. Like, for example, the recession is a hot topic right now. Like, what could you create in that vertical? Like, does that align? I mean, it might not align with what your Web3 product, right? But if it did, then it would be a good trend to jack.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for all the helpful information.
Of course. So I'm here for.
Those are great questions. Thanks, NFT God. Let's bring some more people up. Go ahead and request to speak, and we'll answer a few more questions. Here comes Ash. Ash, one of our top contributors. We're so glad to have you up here, and you can go ahead and unmute.
Sweet. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you well. Hey, Ash.
That was incredible. It's like all these things that I'm sure most of us have in our head of ideas about Web3, but when you see it in a presentation and like so well said, you're just like, yeah, okay, it's a good validation. Your world building honestly reminds me of like you're kind of building a Disneyland, like where there's like all these different themes in the different parks, and there's different things that go on in there. So my question is, like, when you talked about like how your token gated content, things like that, like how do you merge, I guess, Web 2 and Web 3 world? Because what you showed there, like with the world, it seems like that's not really feasible for like a mobile app from the App Store. So like how could you create that that similar experience or environment, but you want people to, because like most people access a lot of the things on mobile, but Web3, we're all on the browser, but you're kind of like, you're cutting off a significant portion of the population to, like when you don't have an app. So how do you merge those two so the experience is similar?
I'm going to answer that question. I'm also going to react to your Disney World comment after I answer your question. So, fantastic question. It is 10 times easier to build on web than it is on mobile, just from a speed perspective. And it's also 10 times easier to build in Web 2 than it is Web 3 from a speed perspective. That's just the reality. So I think that if you want to create a world, you might as well build it on the web, because if you're doing Web 3 and mobile, the reality is it's just so difficult right now. It just takes so long. And your goal is to get validation that your concept even resonates with people. So it's okay that you have mobile web and you do web. I wouldn't worry about it at all. I think that's the exact direction you should go. It actually reminds me a lot of, and I'm happy we're sort of returning to web, because it reminds me a lot of the book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, which is an old school book that came out. Chris, I don't know if you read it, but maybe like 2007.
I've read it. I have it like right here in my bookshelf.
It's like, it's funny because like whenever it came out, let's say 2006, 7, 8, it was like around the great financial crash, and it was like the Holy Grail. It was our Bible. And then all of a sudden, like, we all got fat, basically is what happened. And then we created a lot of us created bloated products and on multi-platforms. It needs to be on Android and iOS and iPad and web and mobile web. And it's like, no, like, validate on web, and that's a great place to start. Now, your Disney World comment, I am such a crazy person that I actually went to live in Orlando for 5 weeks. I got COVID in December 2021, and I watched, there's an incredible, everyone needs to go watch, if you don't have Disney Plus, go get Disney Plus. There's an Imagineering documentary. Type in the chat if you've watched it already. If you haven't, it's required watch for anyone building product in Web3, period. I watched it. I was never like a particular Disney fan, to be honest, but I watched it anyways. Had COVID. I'm like sweating my eyes out while I'm like inhaling this like incredible Walt Disney content. And then I was like, I turned to my girlfriend. I was like, we need to go to Disney World, but I need to like immerse myself there and learn everything about it. So I spent thousands of dollars literally going to all the different parks, understanding like the smells, how like the roads were made, like the different buildings. I'm crazy. Not everyone needs to do that. Maybe just start with watching the documentary. But the point is, Walt Disney and the Imagineering team were the foremost experts in understanding how to immerse people within the physical world.
Honestly, thank you so much. This has like my creative energy is rolling. I'm thinking of crazy stuff that we can do on our projects. I appreciate it.